Welcome, everyone, to this month's Zoominar. Today, we're going to be talking about ministry opportunities that happen in the middle of coaching transitions. We have three special guests that will help us see what this has looked like from their perspective. One of them, a football coach for many years, multiple changes across his career, transitions, and we'll talk about that. Another person who's been an athletes in action staffer. She's been a college basketball player, a coach, administrator, now in another role. And then Pastor Donnell, who's been a character coach at University of Maryland with men's basketball there for a number of years. And so he's just recently gone through a coaching transition from his side with the basketball staff. So we'll talk about this from a number of angles, both from their experiences as well as what do they think is most important, some of the values they hold that we can learn from related to coaching transitions and how we serve well in the midst of them. To start things today, Joe Broker out in Colorado, please, sir, would you pray?
Sure. Father, we thank you for the Zoom today of the men and women who are gathered here in your name. Father, may each of them be able to take a nugget or two away which will encourage them, support them, and even give them opportunities to see how they can better lead and serve. Father, I do pray and thank you for their being servant leaders and really heavy on the servants as they serve as leaders with athletes and coaches and as character coaches and other roles that they have. Father, may we, again, each of us take a nugget away and thank you again for Roger's interest and passion to host the Zoom, and we pray for a special favor for him today as well. In Christ's name, we do pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Joe. To give just a quick introduction of our guests, Stephanie Zonars leads a group called lifebeyondsports.com. Outstanding work. She was a college basketball player, a coach, worked for Athletes in Action for a spell. She has been an athletic administrator, and now she's leading in what's called Halo Hoops, a youth basketball league, doing a tremendous job there. Coach Sean Watson is the head football coach at Wofford University. We've known Sean since 1994 when he threw the door open for me to serve his football team when he was a 34-year-old head coach at a Division I AA football team, and he's had a number of stops in between SIU and now at Wofford. He'll talk about that some. And then Pastor Donnell Jones is at Grace Covenant Church in Washington, D.C. He's also a Nations of Coaches character coach for University of Maryland men's basketball. So welcome, everybody. And here comes my first question to each of you three guests. And I think I'll ask Stephanie to go first. What has been your experience with coaching transitions, just across your career? What's been your experience with them? Good, bad, ugly? Could you describe that for us?
Sure. Thanks, Roger, and thanks for having me today. It's great to be here with all of you. When I was with Athletes in Action for 18 years and in our basketball area mainly, and spent a lot of that time building relationships with coaches, recruiting their players to travel with us on tour. Mm-hmm. And, I think one of the things that I was made aware of when these transitions happen, particularly when a coach gets fired, one of the things I often heard coaches say was that they found out who their true friends were at that time, because a lot of people want to talk to the head coach or to the coaches, and they want to rub shoulders with people like that. But when somebody gets fired, a lot of times we feel like, well, we're not sure what to say, right?
Awkward.
It's awkward and it's hard, and you want to be sensitive because it's very public for them, and so I think from that, I've heard coaches say who've been in that particular situation, being fired, I've heard them say how meaningful it is when people are not silent.
Yeah. Yeah.
When people make an effort just to reach out and say, hey, I am so sorry. You don't have to have the answers or have the next job connection or any, that's not really the point, but being able to just be with them in that disappointment, I think is really critical, particularly when the transition is not of their own choosing.
No
So.
doubt. No doubt. Well said. Coach Watson, I know you've made a number of career transitions, some at your choosing, some not. What's been your experience with just the whole process of making transitions in your employment?
It's like you said, I've had a very interesting career filled with all kinds of awesome opportunities. To be honest with you, all they've made me better. And I've always taken to heart that I wanted to learn from every situation I was involved in. This one here that I just took over was in the mid-season, and it caught everybody by surprise. Me in particular, because they asked me to lead the team, and I tell you, I think the best way for me to put it, sum it up for you, is number one thing, I led from my heart, and I just was myself. I really felt, I felt something I believed the entire time I've been in coaching, and it's reason I am a coach. It truly is the reason, and it's because I was loved, and what we did here was I came in and I told our staff, the men that were with me, I said, hey man, just love the kids, just love them, and and get them to love the game of football again, because a lot of things and that I think had gone the other way for them, and there's a lot of broken hearts, and I think we were in the heart mending business, and we just did it simply by just loving the players, and we have, what caught on here was awesome, and I'm really proud of it because of what I see see what's happening in the kid's life, because what's happened to the program is we've learned to call each other up. There's a difference in calling each other up and calling each other out, and there was a time there that I listened to so many kids, and this happened on a Thursday night. Again, we play on Saturdays, like everybody knows. It happened on Thursday night, and we found out about 5:30 in the evening. So I am, and we play Saturday at 1:00, and I listen to a lot of kids from that time all the way up till game time, and then after, and that's why I had the conviction in my heart. And I just, I was prayerful about it. The story's longer than this, where God got me. To be honest with you, He got me. And where he put my heart, and then it was just made the transition with kids awesome, because we truly, seriously, just we love the kids, and the vibe that we have, and how this team has poured into each other has been awesome.
Good. Yeah. Maybe not everybody's aware, but that transition happened in the middle of the season, and then you had to finish the rest of the season as an interim head coach, and then got established as the permanent head coach postseason. Is that right? About the right timing?
That's true. That's exactly.
Yep. Pastor Donnell, you'd been serving a number of years with Coach Turgeon at Maryland, and then he left abruptly, and you had an interim situation. And so tell me about how that transition has gone for you with the new staff, and what's been your experience with that coaching transition?
Roger, thank you so much for inviting me to be a part today, and hello to everyone. Appreciate being with you all and listening, learning. I've served at the University of Maryland for probably close to 15 years. And as character coach for 4 years with our football team, 10 seasons with Mark Turgeon with men's basketball, 2 seasons with Danny Manning, who succeeded Mark Turgeon. 1 year, Manny's first year, was assistant, and then second year interim head coach, and now presently with Kevin Willard, who is the current head coach at Maryland. And we also serve as a character coach for the women's basketball team as well. If I can, I'd like to start with football.
Sure.
And then answer your question about basketball. The reason why I mentioned football, because I was delighted to hear when you mentioned Coach Watson. So I thought, okay, so we can talk about more than basketball. That's great. And I resonate everything that has been shared so far by Stephanie and Coach Watson. So thank you for that. With respect to football, I served for 4 years. Major transition and very difficult because it surrounded the death of a freshman athlete, Jordan McNair. And so that was very public, ESPN, and very challenging. Probably one of the most challenging transitions that I've had the opportunity and responsibility to serve coaches and players. And happy to answer any questions about that, but that was enormously difficult. With regard to basketball, since that was a specific question, 10 seasons with Coach Turgeon, extraordinary. In the first year, he indicated to me he desired that I would work very closely with the athletes and any coaches who desired. He himself did not have a desire initially for us to build a relationship. After the first season, he had a change of heart. And so began to meet with him on a weekly basis, and it developed into a very close friendship. And we still connect even to this very day. He still lives in the area. The transition from Mark to Danny was abrupt. It happened on December 3rd. I remember getting a call from Mark Turgeon that morning saying, Donnell, there's going to be a meeting today at 1. I really want you to be there. He didn't tell me that he was going to make that announcement. I think in part why I did not know is because our regular meetings weekly, where we talked about everything, his marriage, his family, coaching, we had not seen as much of one another during COVID. COVID protocols, I was less on campus and didn't have direct interaction with the coaches and players. It was more virtual, like this context. So I think if we had been meeting in person, and maybe if I had connected with him in ways during COVID, I may have had that information, but I was learning it at the same time as the coaches and the players. So all of the oxygen left the room. It was an overwhelming moment for Coach Turgeon, for the coaches, and for the players. The coaches were informed 5 minutes before the start of the meeting. The AD was present. So following that meeting, I quickly went to Mark and Ann and said, I want to have a moment with you all. And Mark said, care for the players. They need it most. So went into a room with the players, very emotional. But it was a moment for them to let some air out of the balloon. Because those are the moments where you can really pop. It's two ways to let the air out. Either it pops or you let a little bit out at a time. So it was a letting the air out of the balloon. And we did that for quite some time. Manny, he and Mark played together in Kansas. And it was good to see them reunited as coaches, but it was a total shock to Danny. He served as the interim coach, and it was very challenging because we were not winning at the time. The athletes are trying to navigate as best they know how. Danny was not expecting to be head coach. So that was very challenging. And what I experienced in that moment was people didn't know if Danny was going to become the new head coach or if somebody else would. Obviously, we know now it went from Danny to Kevin Willard. But I would say in the interim or in that transitional period, there is uncertainty and anxiety. People are wondering if they're going to keep their jobs, as has been said by others. And they can feel distant. You have to be intentional about engaging, listening, supporting. How can I? So those have I remain on, and I didn't know if Kevin Willard was going to want me to
Sure.
continue.
No guarantee.
Yeah. And I went in eyes wide open that he may not want a character coach at all, or he may want someone else.
Mhm.
So that's kind of a
Yeah.
synopsis of
Yep.
time in Maryland.
That makes sense. And you kind of anticipated my next question, and that is this, and I'll roll back up to Stephanie to begin. What are some things that coaches and especially their families are dealing with in the middle of all these moments of transition? What are the big issues that the whole family has to deal with in the middle of a transition like this?
Well, I mean, I think Donnell said it well in terms of the level of anxiety for
Mhm.
everybody. I think, I was at Penn State with Coquise Washington for a time, and, just the amount of pressure that a head coach feels to keep their job, not just for their own sake, but for the sake of all the other people that are involved in that.
Exactly.
It's their assistant coaches, and it's their assistant coaches' families, and just it's a heavy mantle of leadership. And, you can just see the weight that they carry, especially when things aren't going well. And when there's that fear there that they might lose their job. So, I mean, there's just so much uncertainty that surrounds it all that, moving, where the next job might be. I've had a number of friends who have been fired from their head coaching job, female head coaches. And, for some reason, it seems like female head coaches in basketball who get let go from a job have a really difficult time becoming a head coach again.
Mm-hmm.
So they often end up, you can see many of them become assistant coaches, become associate head coaches at other schools.
Mm-hmm.
And so just that frustration for them, for the women involved, who, these are women who've been very successful
Mm-hmm.
in their positions. A couple of them who had won conference championships, had been NCAA tournaments, long records of success, and got fired for one reason or the other, and weren't able to become a head coach again. And that's a challenge. So how to go from being a head coach to then becoming an assistant again, and what does that feel like? What does that look like? So there's a lot of different directions you can go with that question, but
Sure.
One thing that I'll mention is that I've noticed among coaches, because coaching is such a demanding profession and there's not a lot of margin, and most coaches are kind of type A, and they feel like more is better, and pouring their whole life into a program. We see example after example of that around us. But what ends up happening is that a coach loses their job, and they don't have any other foundation to stand on. They don't know who they are apart from being a coach.
Bingo. They lose identity as well as the job.
Yes. And they haven't invested many times, not every coach, but many coaches, because they feel like they have to invest so much
Sure.
to keep their job and to have a good program and to win. They don't invest in other things. They don't invest in being involved in their local church to the degree that maybe they could, being part of small groups, pursuing a hobby, all these things that for other people, if you would lose your job, you have some sense of being, but when a coach oftentimes loses their job, they are lost.
Yeah.
They are lost. They do not know what to do. And surprisingly, and again, I'll speak from a women's perspective here, because that's where most of my relationships are. I was friends with a women's head coach. She had been coaching for 25 plus years, seasoned coach, successful. And she lost her job, and she did not think she was qualified to do anything but coach basketball.
Yeah.
and trying to help her to see how you were the CEO of a program. You led all these different people, you made all these different kinds of decisions, but it was so difficult for her to see how her skill set could transition into a lot of different things, you know? And so, you know, there's such a weightiness to that. And it's so hard for them, when they're in that position. And, you know, again, so I think we do a service to the people that we serve when we help them explore who they really are, and help them cultivate a life outside of their sport and just their job. Because that is going to serve them well, whether they get fired or whether they just retire. You know, someday they're not going to coach anymore, and they're not going to have a clue who they are or what they like to do, or, you know, anything. So I've seen that so many times, and I just think it's really important.
You're right. It's such a consuming lifestyle that many times they don't have anything outside of that. It's just the way it is. Coach Watson, in your transitions between roles, various places to coach, what were some of the things you and Anita and your kids dealt with just in the move from place to place?
Well, it's, you know, in coaching, you really have to get I think you got to get your why right, you know, and I had to get my why right. And I tell you, I got it because I got a great wife. Because so much of our lives are spent with other people's kids, you know, and we pour our life into, you know, coaches we work with. Majority of my career, you've been a head coach or a coordinator, and you're pouring your life into, you know, coaches, and you're pouring your life into the players. And, you know, one of the things that I was blessed with was my wife, who made me pour my life. She understood it. She got it. She understood my passion, my love, which was, I really appreciate even more today than ever before. And, you know, then she made me stop and take that time for our boys and for our kids. And that, you know, that's been, you know, now that I'm on this side, they're all out in life and having families, and I am so appreciative. I mean, she used to make me, she says, listen, I get it. You want to work, and I'm that guy. I'm the guy that my hobby is you know, I got other hobbies outside of football. I'm not crazy yet, almost crazy, but she would say I don't have any. But so she would, I would go in, for example, in the morning, because I'm an early morning person. So I'd go in, no stars on my chart. I went in at, you know, I'd go in at 4:35 in the morning, and I'd go, and, you know, that was the day we didn't have all the technology that we had today. And that's when I was coaching in Colorado with Gary Barnett. And, you know, I'd go in and I'd do my work. And then the boys were going to get up around, you know, it's Saturday morning, Sunday morning, they'd get up around, you know, 7:30, 8 o'clock. And I made sure that, and she made sure that I was back there because they enjoyed me fixing breakfast for them.
There you go.
You know, my son Adam is here with us right now, actually in town today. And, you know, he's, you know, every time he comes to town, he asked me, hey, cooking breakfast on Saturday. So, you know, but I appreciate those moments and that time. And Anita's always been, she made me stop and be a dad and stop. And because, you know, and I had just a great love and appreciation for her. So I stopped and I was a husband. And I wasn't always that way. When she saw that you know, when I first became a coordinator in Colorado with Gary, I was really into the game, which we're all, you know, that's, you know, I was into the game, and she was the one that she checked me up, and that was good. So, and then as we've gone through our transitions as a family, our transitions through the highs and the lows, I think we knew each other's heart. They knew my heart. I knew their heart. And because I think they had an appreciation for, you know, my heart for coaching, you know, I'm really a product of my mom. She was a high school teacher. I saw her pour her life into, you know, students and people in our community. And, you know, that's always, I guess that's where I get this gene from, or I get this, me from. And my kids now appreciate that about me. They appreciate that about my life. And, I appreciate the fact that Anita held me accountable to them, and helped me put them, at their proper place on the priority.
Coach, I remember sitting with you in the staff room at SIU on a Sunday morning when you had an offer from Gary to go coach at Northwestern. And I remember you saying, why shouldn't I go take this job and coach like 3 quarterbacks and see my own kids at night?
Yeah.
I said, Coach, I don't have a good answer for you.
Yeah.
I see no reason not to. And I'm glad you did what you did. Even though you left us, I'm glad you did, because I knew it would be good for you, good for your family. That I'm proud of you related to that. You changed jobs for the right reason. That was brilliant. Donnell, what are the things you see the coaches and their spouses, their kids dealing with in the middle of these transitions? Had to be really tough for Coach Turgeon to make that shift. And how did family respond? What was your observation?
First of all, love Mark and Ann Turgeon. They got 3 great kids. One of the things that we had talked about, the pressure that comes with coaching, and particularly the pressure that he was experiencing near the time of transition, where you don't have the support of the fans, and it can be very public even during games, and your children are sitting in the stands, maybe a row ahead of people who are saying things not just about the coach, but about your dad, and how you sit through a 2-hour game and bear that, and how mom tries to protect the child, and the need to have people step and speak to fans and say, listen, you may want to be sensitive here, right? So there's the work, right? The pressure of that. There's the weight, which is what coaches carry even when they're not working. Unfortunately, so many people think in basketball that your work is relegated to the 2-hour window that they see when they come to a game, and it's not. It's so much more than that. And the weight is what you carry even when you're not working. I think for coaches, it's very challenging because weight is less visible. It's what you carry even when it's your day off, if you have one of those. And then the third W is war. And that's the internal fight because, as Stephanie said, your identity is so much associated with your work that the war inside is, who am I? And if the measure of who I am is my performance, then today is not a good day because our team is losing.
Yeah.
And I think it's hard. So part of the transition is this has been so much a part of your life. You don't know where you're going. The people who loved you and celebrated you when you first came seem to be the same group who are now saying, we can't wait for you to be gone. And so that is enormously hard. And I think it puts a strain on marriages.
No doubt.
The strain on the family. I think the strain on the marriage is, in college basketball, I've heard, this is not Mark and Ann, but one coach's wife told this story publicly at an event, and it was with coaches' wives, and she said, I told my husband we have moved 7 times in like the last 10 years, and if this job doesn't work out, you have to go somewhere else. The kids and I aren't going to be moving with you.
Wow.
So that kind of pressure at a point of transition, how do you not bleed on your family? How do you not bleed emotionally on your players and coaching staff? That's really, really hard.
Oh, man.
It's hard on the kids with the transition because many of them, they're established in school. They've got friends. And so they don't want to be uprooted and then have to go someplace and start all over. And so sometimes in the coaching profession, kids can feel like, well, this really is, we're just following our dad, who's a coach around the country, and we have no idea where we're going to go or what we're going to do. And so that's all very difficult and very challenging. So I think it's important to sit down and process those things. And so those are conversations that Mark and I, again, the transition he made me aware of on the day that everybody else found out, but sitting down and be able to walk through this, what does this mean? And I think first addressing in the life of the coach, who you are, your identity, apart from your work, what you do, because there may not be a lot of people who are helping speak that, and so I think that's absolutely essential.
Yep, agreed. We mentioned this related to Coach Watson, but I'm curious as to others. What have been some of the most important values as you've made decisions related to transition? Stephanie, I know you moved from coaching and you were administrator and you worked for AIA. In making those transitions, what were the values that were most important to you in making those decisions to change roles?
Yeah, I think I was with Athletes in Action for 18 years and had a lot of phenomenal opportunities and, grew so much in my faith because of all the great people I was around all those years. And, there came a time when I felt like I needed another challenge. I needed something different. And so that was kind of what precipitated the challenge, the transition to start my own business, which you mentioned earlier, Roger, Life Beyond Sport, and to see if I could do it, see what would happen. And, was still able to do what I was passionate about, which was to serve college coaches and high school coaches through team building and personal coaching and things like that. So, and that led to another opportunity to work at Penn State, which I never anticipated. That wasn't really on my radar, particularly as a lifelong Buckeye fan. But Coquise offered me something that I just felt like God's hand was in it. I didn't totally understand it. The timing was not great for me to be moving away from my family. But I just felt like I was supposed to. And so I did. That was another transition. Then coming back to Ohio was more due to family. My dad had been in a memory care facility pretty much the whole time I was in Pennsylvania. And, I knew that he was nearing the end of his life, and excuse me, I didn't want to live that far from my family during that time. And so that was what kind of led me back to Ohio and more into athletic administration from there. But, I think it does come down to, as Coach Watson said, your why.
Yep.
Why are you coaching? That helps you make decisions about the kind of job you're looking for, the kind of program, so many different things. And I think understanding, as I think all of us have said, just who you are. And, I know coaches have program values, right? They've got the pillars, or they've got whatever the thing is, and I'm a big proponent of that. I love that stuff. But I also think that we can serve our coaches by helping them to know what their personal values are, like their own values. What is really important to them as a human being? And if they're believers, what are you uniquely created to do?
Yeah.
Beyond just being a coach, but deeper than that. There's 1,000 different ways you can approach coaching. And every coach is not meant to be just like every other coach. I think the coaches who are successful figure out that they can learn from other coaches, but they have to be their unique self in order to really thrive and be, be an influencer. We can't fake that. People see that. They see through that. So, we can't want to be the next Pat Summit or Gino or whatever the name is out there, Mike Krzyzewski, whatever. We have to figure out how to be ourselves and how to be bring our unique gifts. And I think helping coaches understand that and who they are in that can be a help to prepare them for the transition times.
Agreed. Coach Watson, how would you state some of those most central values to you as you looked at taking a new position or going from university A to B? What helps you make those decisions? What are those values?
Well, I honestly, the first thing I'd say is I've really followed my heart. And, I'm 60 years into it now, and I'm still a work in progress. And, but during that work in progress, I found some really cool things that I really believe God's got for all of us. And, I think in my heart, I believe that mankind, we're meant to love and serve each other.
Mm-hmm.
And, I say that because, that's always been, when I found that in my life, and really found that meaning, it's not about your name in lights. It's not what's on your shirt. It's not what you get paid. It's what God's purpose is for your life. And I think it helped me find it. That's my walk. When I found that, I found true peace. I don't worry about things that I once did, was immature, and, I was chasing, trying to get to to be the head coach of the Super Bowl team. I just think God's got a plan for all of our life. And, as I've sat down and really had decisions to make, I've had some really cool opportunities. And I know that his hand has opened up many of those opportunities. And, if not all of them, he's opened all of them. Mm-hmm. And sometimes what I've done is I've made foolish human mistakes. That's what I'm trying to say here. Yeah. And I've done something that, and he always saves me though, and this is early in my career. So what I've done as I've matured, I hope I need to tell you I've done that, but as I've matured and really found my heart for him and what he's done for me and what he's done for us, it doesn't matter what's on your shirt. It doesn't matter what you get paid. It matters what you're doing for him. In the end, in heaven, we're his children. We're the same. And, I want, my simple prayer is that I'll serve his purpose.
Yeah.
From my life to his perfection.
Brilliant.
And that's what my heart's become. And that's not what I did. That's what he did to me. That's what he helped me find.
Yeah.
And when it's like that, man, every day is a great day.
No doubt.
They're still challenging, still hard. There's still got things you got to deal with, but you can get through so much stuff because what's really important. What's really important is the love you're pouring into another human being. Because in the end, I really believe that's what we're here for each other.
Yeah, really good. That really resonates with me because I remember reading years ago, Acts 13, and Paul's speaking, and he's talking about the King David. And he said, when David had fulfilled the purposes of God in his generation, he died and was buried with his fathers. I thought, how great would that be to get to the end of my life and somebody would say of me that guy fulfilled God's purposes for his life and he died. That's a winner. That's a good day. That's a good life if you can fulfill God's purposes. Pastor Donnell, with Coach Turgeon, with others as they've gone through, Danny Manning, others now, the football coaches, could you tell us if they ever showed you what those purposes were for them, what those reasons were, the values they held in making career choices and transitions?
Roger, great question. I so resonate with both what Stephanie and Coach Watson have said. Hearing Stephanie talk about her decision to return home because her father was in a memory care facility.
Yeah, that's huge.
Coach Watson, I haven't met his wife, but she's great, telling him he needs to, be a father. And Adam is there now saying, can you cook on Saturday? And so those choices, the choice to cook breakfast on Saturday, the choice to come back home because your dad's, that is clearly saying that your priorities are aligning with the why, aligning with a God-inspired purpose that values relationships, right? Over the what comes from others as a result of you being a coach, right? I say it this way: living from acceptance, not living for acceptance.
Yeah, well said.
Right. And so I think when we understand that when I'm listening to Stephanie, when I'm listening to Coach Watson, what I hear is people who have resolved my acceptance is from God. And so when that happens in us, in the human heart and mind, we can wake up and we don't have to live for acceptance. We're living from it. I think Jesus modeled that so well for us, right? Mm-hmm. To have his own father at his baptism publicly express acceptance and affirmation. And it was before water had been turned to wine, before any miracles. So he wasn't performance driven. It was the love of his father. His father accepts him, and the temptation can be so overwhelming. Right after his baptism, he's led by the Spirit into the wilderness. He fasts for 40 days and 40 nights. And then the question on the table is, are you the son? And this is Donnell's commentary. Were you not in my baptism? Did you not hear my father? Or did you think that was just thunder when he said, this is my son? Yeah. So do you think I have a need to turn stone into bread as if I don't receive my acceptance from my father? No, I'll go hungry another 40 days. So I think that's an example to us to be able to live from a place of our Father's acceptance of us that then helps us not be driven by living for acceptance from others, because you never get enough.
No,
never paid enough. It's never enough wins. It's never enough anything. I think, Roger, probably my thought, if I could take a different side of the question, since I'm not the coach, I don't have the experience of Stephanie and Coach Watson. And even though I've had conversations with coaches about that, for Danny was like, I don't need the money, right? He did really well in the NBA, but he was concerned about his wife's family. There were some medical things that need to take place in the family. His daughter was getting married in the summer. So his focus was really on, I'm preparing for a wedding. I'm going to walk my daughter down the aisle.
Good.
I'm helping my wife care for her mom, has a diagnosis that was very significant. Mark making the decision that, you know what, I could stay here and continue to do this, but I'm going to go be with my wife. And so then, hey, Mark, how you doing today? I'm in Italy with Anne. I'm at a play with his daughter, and she's a singer. So all of these things are what, me and my wife, Marianne, said, hey, we want to take you and Anne out for dinner. We finally got to take them to lunch, but he was so busy doing all these family things. Good. And turning down opportunities to continue to work in the profession at schools who wanted him, but he made a choice of family over that. Good. So I'll stop there. There's one thing I want to add, but I'll wait.
Okay. I have one last question here. And that is where the rubber meets the road for character coaches and sports chaplains like us. Stephanie, let me ask you, how can character coaches, sports chaplains, how can we be of greatest service in these moments when somebody's fired, when somebody's, hey, I just got a new job and I'm off to wherever, or what happens a lot of times, we notice the head coach gets fired, but guess what? Probably everybody else in the staff does too. How do we be of greatest service to those folks in those kind of moments?
I think the ministry of presence can be really powerful in those
sure.
moments. Like, we're not going to have the answers. A lot of times it's hard to know what the words might be if it's a negative kind of situation. But I think sitting with somebody and being a good listener, and just, even if it's just going to do something completely different, being available, that's a lot of what you all do as character coaches and as ministers anyway, is just being available and noticing. I think just what you said, Roger, noticing that it's not just the head coach. There's a lot of people that are impacted by that, down to administration, like an administrative assistant. A new coach might come in and might not vibe with that person, so that person might be gone. Like, it's not just the coaching staff that is impacted, for sure. So, I think just noticing that it's hard for people, that transition and change is hard, whether it's to a new exciting job or to, or getting fired from a job. I think it can all be challenging for a host of reasons. And just noticing and acknowledging that, I think, can be really powerful.
Agreed. I remember riding between Des Moines, Iowa and Omaha, Nebraska on a bus with a women's head coach. We're sitting there on the bus in the middle of the evening, driving through the night, and we both know she's going to get fired as soon as she gets home. And we sat there and talked about that process. Here's what's coming. How do we handle this? That was a tough bus ride, but it was the right thing to do, and it was worth the pain to care for my friend, for sure. Coach Watson, what do you think a character coach or a sports chaplain can do for these folks we're trying to serve in the middle of these transition times?
I agree with Stephanie. I think being there is critical, and just, being a listener and knowing, just a supporter. I've been on both sides of it. I've been the new guy coming in, and I was the part of the staff that left. And I can, the story I think of when you were asking the question was our buddy Chris Morgan at Louisville.
Yeah.
Was the new guy coming in. Chris was the first guy there to meet me.
Wow.
And Chris made me really feel at home at Louisville, and I had no idea where anything was. And he was always there. I was there the next morning. Anything I can do to help you. And then we left and went to Texas, and we left behind. I mean, truth. I'll be honest with you. I cried leaving that building, because those kids, well, they were big in my life. And he had to help me get out the building. And then he was there for those kids, most importantly, to help them make their transition into, the next phase of their life. And, he kept us uniquely all together too. I just hired one of those guys as my running back coach, Norris Perry. So it's been, he kept us all together. It's amazing. Teddy and all those guys. I mean, we're still, like we never left each other. So I think the role, that's the very first thing I did here at Wofford. I sought out my life coach, because that to me is critical for us as a staff, because I need, I need it. I want somebody to keep me, help me stay accountable, keep me in check, and then help grow our coaches, and help grow our players. So I think the role that I've always felt that way, and I always will feel that way, because it's I think it's the most vital role on a staff, and you're the guy that proved that to me.
You're very kind. Pastor Donnell, what do you see as some of those most critical things you've been able to do with that staff there in Maryland?
Yeah. So I'm going to say this: water anyone? Offer water to everyone at the table.
Yep.
And to do so, recognizing that everyone at the table may not find everybody at the table somebody they want to be at the table with right now. Just prior to being asked to serve as a character coach, I was reading through Daniel and got such a picture, which I didn't know how much that picture would help aid me as a character coach serving through nations of coaches. When Daniel is trained to serve along with his close friends, Nebuchadnezzar, we all know he made up his mind that he would not eat or drink from the king's table. Essentially, what he said is, this is not the table I eat from, it's the table I serve. So I encourage character coaches to recognize, if it's the University of Maryland, wherever you are, this is the table you eat from, it's the table you serve. So you're standing at that table, you're not seated. If your server sat down at your table and took a piece of your steak, you would be, all right, moving right along. So I take the posture of being a server. When Jordan McNair died with the football team, I had a coach who I went in his office to check on him. And he said, I don't want to talk to you. I said, why? He said, because you're helping that coach. And he doesn't deserve to be here.
Wow.
And this was a coach who was in a Bible study with me. And so I said to him, I said, listen, I'm not siding with him against you, and I'm not siding with you against him. I'm the server at the table, and I'm not refusing anybody water. My job is to put water in everybody's glass. He texted me, I left his office. He texted me the next morning and said, thank you so much. In the heat of the moment, with all the intensity that's going on, I just, related to you in a way that was out of character for me. You don't get paid to do this. And yeah, you're trying to help everybody on the team, not just me. So it was a moment that let me know that is the proper place. This is the table I serve, not the table I eat from. The table I eat from are the character coaches.
Yeah.
And so serving that table. So water anyone. I think the other thing would be, it's already saying be present, but to encourage, listen and encourage.
Yeah.
What I think I say to the new coaches who come on, who don't know me, and what's interesting in my position now is that I've been there for more than 10 years, but it's a new coach, it's a new coaching staff, it's new players. Everyone's new almost, except me and one or two others. But what isn't new is God's favor. That's the same. It's just going to flow differently. But one thing I think to encourage coaches is to say to them, coach, because it's such a demanding profession, and every time their phone rings, somebody wants something from them. Somebody. They never get a call except they know somebody wants something. What I think a character coach can help in encouraging says, coach, I don't want anything from you. I want something for you.
That's it.
How can I serve you today? You can't serve me right now. My wife, Say, coach, can I pray for you? Sure. God, I thank you for this coach. I thank you that he loves his wife so much that he feels the burden of it even while he's sitting here at his desk. Let him hit pause for a moment and text her and call her. And then he starts crying at his desk. And then the next thing you know, he's like, hey, Mac, just come back and pray for me again sometime, will you? Coach, we can do this regularly. It can be spontaneous and scheduled.
Yeah.
So never wanting anything from them, always wanting something for them. Praying for them even when you're not with them, so that God impresses something on your heart that when you show up in the moment, it might be 3 seconds, it might be 30 seconds, it might be 3 minutes, it might be 30 minutes. But the entire time is, I don't want anything from you.
Yeah.
I want something for you. God's best. And at the end of the day, I think as character coaches, our job, like a server in a restaurant, is to offer wine and bread. And I'm not speaking about the kind you buy at a store.
Exactly.
Communion with Jesus.
Yep. That's really good. I appreciate that. Thank you, Stephanie, Coach Watson, Pastor Donnell. Thanks so much for your valuable input today. I'm going to wrap things up here in a moment. Stephanie, if I may I ask you to pray for our character coaches, and as they serve at the table with the coaches and the families they serve, would you please pray that we all have wisdom and grace to be able to serve really well in the middle of coaching transitions?
Absolutely. I'd be honored to. Thank
Please.
you. Lord, that's such a powerful word picture. I hope we all leave with it just that we are there to serve, to give everybody at the table water. whatever that might look like. And Lord, I thank you for these men and for those that they serve. Thank you for their hearts to serve. And I pray that you would give them eyes to see the needs around them, even the unspoken needs, things that may not be very obvious, but by your Spirit, would you give them wisdom to discern and to see and to notice those who need a special touch from you, and may you use them as vessels of your grace and goodness. Lord, I pray for just all the coaches that they are around, those who are in transitions that are positive and those who are in transitions that are difficult. May you help us all to be salt and light in those spaces, and to be just who you want us to be, to use the gifts that you've given us to encourage and to love on the people that you put in front of us. So we thank you for this conversation. We pray that it was honoring and glorifying to you, and we ask you to go before us now as we seek to love your children. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thanks so much, everyone. Next month, April 6th, we will talk about opportunities for professional and personal growth. What are ways we can continue to build our skill set, our understanding, our knowledge base, so that we serve with great excellence. And thanks so much, everybody, for joining us today. Bless you.